Hello and welcome to my van. Today we're going to talk about the books I have been reading recently, specifically all the books I read in May and June. This is a 2-month wrap up in one. So starting with May, why not? According to the STORYGRAPH, I read 10 books for a total of 2,685 pages. So first of all, I listened to The Return of the Soldier by Rebecca West. This is a very short but very complicated story. I'm actually in the middle of rereading it physically. So since listening to it, I bought not one, but 2 copies of the book. And I am now physically reading it very slowly because I don't want to miss anything. I've devised a color coding system to put sticky tabs in, and I'm just really savoring the writing. What's it about? Well, I guess it's a story of Chris, a soldier in World War I, as told by his devoted cousin Jenny. And she is relaying the drama that unfolds when he suffers head injury, or develops shell shock anyway, at least, which affects his memory, and he reverts back. He loses 15 years of his life. So he does not remember his wife of 12 years, Kitty, who is a very beautiful, young, happy, flighty thing. Instead, he is adamant that he see the girl he loved 15 years ago, Margaret, married in her own right, of a lower class, a plain, dowdy kind of woman who Kitty and Jenny both just look on in absolute disdain. But that's who Chris remembers, and so the story is unfolding as this very emotional processing of like what's best for Chris, and just seeing the relationships between the 3 women and this man that they all love. It's an absolutely beautiful story with lots to unpack and amazing use of symbolism. So it was a 5-star listen. I'm more than halfway through rereading it, and it's a 5-star reread. I listened to All Systems Red, which is the first novella in the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells, and this again was a reread. I'm doing a lot of like rereads this year, and it's making me really happy. Like I love that I'm revisiting things that I've enjoyed in the past and still enjoying them. This is a sci-fi set in the future. There is a team sent to a planet to do some testing. I think there's different companies trying to decide if they want mining rights on this planet. Like there's a whole political element to this story that's maybe a little bit above me, but like I get it enough. Anyway, part of this team is Murderbot. He is a security unit, so there's biological components, but essentially he's a robot who hacked his own system to give himself autonomy and has been faking obedience. Really, all he wants to do is watch the hours and hours and hours of TV shows that they had downloaded. But yeah, so Murderbot is just very anxious, very shy, and very introverted, and yet has to like protect these people, eventually it becomes obvious that they've hacked their own system and they're acting of their own free will, and that brings up a whole other conversation about civil liberties and who has rights, and at what point is making robots or like sentient AI perform a task, like where do we cross the line into slavery? Like what does that look like, and who should have freedoms? Really interesting book. I think the audiobook is 2, maybe 3 hours long. Highly recommend. I have not read, so there's maybe 4 or 5 novellas and then a full-length novel. and I feel like I've read most of, or listened to most of the novellas, but I have not done the full-length novel yet. I listened to Oh Pioneers, which was another reread. 5-star book then, 5-star book now. This is about a Swedish family in the Midwest in the early 1900s, and it follows I think she's the oldest sister. She's the one female sibling in this family group. And when the father passes away, she's so smart that she kind of takes control and runs the farm and brings the family into success and prosperity. And so as you know, the land gets split up and each of the sibling has their own kind of life, we're seeing like the fallout of that. It's a very quiet, kind of cozy story. Like there is family butting heads, there's a little bit of romance, and there's just beautiful setting and like place writing in this book, Oh Pioneers by Willa Cather. So I read that because prior to listening to that, I read Main Street by Sinclair Lewis. And this is a satire of like the Midwest polite society in the 1900s. We have a young woman who marries a man who lives in, is it Minnesota? Small town in Minnesota, and he convinces her to move out there with him. She has much more liberal dreams and she agrees to move to this town, but in her mind she's going to bring this sort of enlightenment and appreciation of the arts and like new science and new ways of thinking, which makes her a real outsider in the community. And so the whole story follows her years living there. It's funny in a very subtle way, and it pokes fun at like I said, polite society in a real subtle way, because you see how mean and hypocritical people can be. And the reason this read led to me listening to Oh Pioneers is because there was a lot of anti-immigrant, anti-Swedish sentiment throughout Main Street, and I wanted to return to a Swedish family and kind of wash out the negativity. Yeah, this I gave 4 stars. But the more I think on it, I feel like I want to rate it higher. Like I definitely want to read more Sinclair Lewis. I'm very much looking forward to that. I read A Leopard Skin Hat. This was off the International Booker Prize shortlist. It's a story about a friendship and what it is like to love someone with depression, essentially. I kind of had like an up and down experience reading this. I thought it was beautifully written and very emotionally charged and really hit me. Like I thought like I might not be in a good place to read it. Yeah, it really was emotional, where I was like, this is rough. Like it talks a lot about the experience of being the support system for someone who's very up and down. I think it's very obvious from the beginning that the friend in question has committed suicide. So about midway through the, like it's teased at from the very beginning, and then midway through the book, like we're talking about it more up front. And then by the end of the book, another very, very short like novella, by the end there's this kind of uncomfortable glamorization of the act of taking one's own life, where like I get it, but it made me feel a little weird. Like phone fell. Like I don't want to pass judgment on people who get to that point where they feel like that's the only course that they can take, and the author is actually writing this as a form of processing her sister taking her own life. But there's this sense it's of like release, and like this character is in a better place now, and are finally happy. That was like beautiful, but felt weird at the same time. Anyway, I gave A Leopard Skin Hat 3.75 stars. Babel by R.F. Kuang. I expected to love this. I thought it would be a 5-star read. I'll go right ahead and tell you it was a 3.5-star read for me. The themes of it I absolutely loved, exploring colonization and the use of language and the exploitation of countries by the British Empire. I did not love the magic system, and I thought the character development was weak. I'm also not the biggest fan of like dark academia, which this book definitely is. It takes place in Oxford. Yeah, it mostly all takes place in Oxford in their like language department. And so it ended up kind of missing the mark for me. Annibot. This was an audiobook I listened to actually this I think was the last book of the month for me because it's short and I just wanted to listen to something quick while I was taking a walk. This is about a autodidactic robot, a comfort buddy robot, which is a nice way of saying sex bot. And what this book ends up exploring is the relationship dynamic between an empath, which is what Annibot represents. Because she's autodidactic, she's learning and she's processing the emotions of her owner, her boyfriend, her owner. And she's framing her existence around what would make him happy. So it's a relationship between, yes, Annibot, the empath, and I think his name was Doug? I could be totally wrong. A narcissist. He is a narcissist. He's emotionally abusive. And that seems weird to say, like, given the dynamic, like, given the roles of their relationship, like, he's literally had her built. He owns her. She's an object. But the fact that she has self-learning capabilities and processes emotions, like she has very real emotions, it brings up like really ethical morality type questions that I found very fun to explore. Where it lost me is in the very sexual nature of the book. There's a lot of time spent in romantic scenes, which I don't necessarily mind. However, I enjoyed exploring how Annie learns and experiences very real emotions. That makes sense to me, even for a robot. What didn't make sense to me was the way she describes physical sensation. It was written as a very biological, like, feeling response, as opposed to a processing of external stimuli, and like that kind of gets mentioned as a reason why she can like sense cold or sense heat or, you know, things like that. And there is a biological component to how Annie is built. Like, she actually, her skin is human skin that was created with stem cells. And so like she bruises, but the way she processes pain and pleasure was written in a way that like her feeling sensation, her sense of touch felt too human. And there was a disconnect there for me. I liked attributing like more human thoughts and emotions to her. That made sense to me, but the physicalness and her responses to physical touch and like feeling things, that was off to me. I gave it 3.5 stars, and I actually ended up buying it after reading it when I came across it in a library book sale. I just had to take a phone call from my son's baseball coach, so that interrupted me. I think I left off on Annibot. I think I've said all that needs to be said there. It was a quick read, an entertaining read, a not perfect read. If you don't like spicy books, skip it. But if you like discussions of like AI and you know, power dynamics in relationships, I think that's where it interested me. I read The Dream Hotel by Layla Lalami. This might be my favorite book of the year. 5 freaking stars, about a woman who's detained at the airport because a dream of hers, which is recorded by a device that she had implanted of her own choice, no one forced this, to help her get more restful sleep. She's a new mom, she's struggling. Well, the company who makes this device also sells data. And this is a very near future, but very dystopian kind of book where the government surveillance is just, you know, it's elevated even from where it is now today. And so the data collected from her dreams is incorporated into this analytical system and deems her a threat. She gets sent not to prison because she hasn't actually committed a crime, but she gets sent to a facility where she has to go through a program to basically prove that she's a safe person. A whole bunch of ethical discussions in there and explorations of surveillance and justice, race, because this you know, she is a Muslim woman who has experienced throughout her life, and her family has always experienced prejudices, and so now this is just like the next level of that. So it takes very real problems and just kind of drops it into this slightly futuristic dystopian world. Absolutely loved it. It reminded me a lot of Minority Report. Have not read, but loved the movie. Also reminded me of one of my favorite books from last year, or the year before that, which was The School for Good Mothers. So if you liked Dream Hotel, check out that. If you liked that, check out Dream Hotel. That was definitely the highlight of May and probably of my 2025 reading year as a whole. It's a little too early to call it, but I might. Read physically Interior Chinatown. In my wrap up from April, I mentioned that I listened to Interior Chinatown, and upon finishing it, I basically, that same morning, restarted it, but in book form, because I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss anything. And I didn't. It was excellent. Like, it was still kind of confusing and disorienting. That's what made me want to like revisit it to make sure I like really got it. And that's just the nature of the book. But what it does is explores the immigrant minority experience of, in this case specifically, Asian Americans, and how they're expected to fill a role, and that their lives are basically performance. So I love that. And then we do have a 1-star read, and that is The Bridge of San Luis Rey by Thornton Wilder. I think I vlogged this reading experience. I just didn't like it. I didn't like Thornton Wilder's writing. It felt like a white man trying to affect like a Latin American literary style. And it also felt very pointless. It was just 100% a flop for me. I hated every moment that I read it. Luckily, it's very short and didn't take too long. We've moved. I finished talking about May reads, ran into the library, ate a little bit of lunch, and I'm now at the park where I'll be picking up my kids when they're ready. They're on a bike ride. But now let's talk about my June reads. And this should go a lot quicker because in June I decided to check in weekly. So for descriptions and thoughts on most of these books, you can check out previous videos. I'll just go over what I read and my ratings for them. So in June I read 9 books for a total of 2,789 pages, and my average rating was a 3.8. Still a pretty decent rating. I am actually surprised this month's average was so high. Because there's, well, 2 5-star reads and 2 4.5-star. There's a few books that never even got rated. Like, I just don't feel like there's something worth assigning a number to. Like, it doesn't feel right or fair. So, first example of that is Orbital by Samantha Hervey. I did not do a good job reading this. It took me months, and it's a tiny little book. I acknowledge that the writing is beautiful. However, it was plotless and like not characterless, but like the characters themselves weren't the point of the book, which is basically just recounting a day in the life of 6 astronauts as they orbit the Earth 16 times in their International Space Station. So I didn't rate that one because it didn't feel fair to the book when I don't think it's meant to take as long as I took with it. I had a long break from it. It's not necessary to rate it. I mean, it's generally loved. Like, it's a 5-star read for almost everybody else. I listened to Hurricane Child by Case and Callender and gave this a 2.5-star rating, which I feel really bad about. I mean, it is a middle grade book. However, it's kind of dark and heavy for a middle grade book. Talked about this in a weekly wrap up. I also talked about my 5-star read, which is The Book of Night Women by Marlon James. Absolutely loved this story that takes place in colonial Jamaica and follows several enslaved women. Yeah, I talk about this one more in depth, so I'll link that video. I also read Clockwork Orange, which got 4.5 stars, and this one has a very, very in-depth discussion video, which I will also link. That's the one Nicole and I did together for our high school reading project. There will also be a discussion video on Nicole's channel on the next book we read in that high school reading challenge series, which was The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. So I'm not going to give you my rating for this yet, but I will give you a little teaser for how that discussion went. I read Fun Home by Alison Bechdel. This is a graphic memoir. Didn't love it. 2.5 stars. This documents her relationship with her father, and her coming to understand her queer identity and also coming to understand her father's closeted queer identity. And it explores the relationship they had growing up and leading up to his eventual suicide. I feel like suicide ends up being a big theme in quite a few of the books I read recently. I listened to Our Prison's Obsolete by Angela Davis. I didn't love this, and I didn't bother rating it. This was like a very brief exploration into the prison abolition movement. I read Dungeon Crawler Carl for my book club. I gave this 4.5 stars. Absolutely had a blast with it. Really fun. It's very much like a Hunger Games, Dungeons and Dragon, Ready Player One combination of a book, and it was a lot of fun. I actually just picked it up from the library because I had put it on hold and the library took forever. So I grabbed it anyway because I might recommend it to my son. So I might have him test it out, and if he likes it, we'll probably just end up buying a copy. And I want to continue on in the series, so I would just go ahead and buy books 1 and 2, if that be the case. And then I have a vlog for my birthday weekend, over which I read the novelization of the movie Labyrinth, Jim Henson's Labyrinth. And I decided not to rate this one either because I didn't go into it expecting great literature. I expected a good time, a nostalgic sort of experience, and I got that. But I was right on the money and not thinking the writing would be great. So, I mean, that's another case where it didn't feel fair to give it a star rating. So, that is everything I read in the months of May and June. I think I had my favorite book of the year. One of my favorite books of the year. We'll see what happens. Let me know if you have thoughts on any of these reads. Are you reading along with Nicole and I as we revisit our high school required reading assignments? Have you found your favorite book of the year so far? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. Bye.
They carried malaria tablets, love letters, 28-pound mine detectors, dope, illustrated Bibles, and each other. And if they made it home alive, they carried unrelenting images of a nightmarish war that history is only beginning to absorb.
I have a very strong memory of asking a classmate, so what did they carry?
I'm sure as not having read the book, he'd be like, wait, what?
Because nothing about this book was that's my kind of story. I'm so ready to believe anything the author is giving me. But in this case in particular, I was like, these are the facts. Even though he's like, no, these aren't. weight is lifted. And you're like, oh yeah, because they were carrying it.
Right.
Fiction is so useful in relaying a truth. And then at the end, he's like, all made up. And I was like, oh man, come on. I loved that story. As a first rule of thumb, therefore, you can tell a true war story by its absolute uncompromising allegiance to obscenity and evil.
In other books, you could be like, wow, that's inappropriate. I don't like that. But he's more like, but this happened. By that point in the book, I had totally like settled on like, none of this is real.
Yeah.
Dad, can't you write about something else?
Like he was having a good old time being there.
I would say that makes him the least suited. Okay, so shall we show our grades?
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.